Hi guys, and welcome to True Crime UK. Just an advisory that we'll be talking about murder, so viewer discretion is advised. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe and leave a thumbs up. Also, hit the bell for notifications of when I release my videos. Now, on the 26th of April 1999, Jill Dando, an English journalist, television presenter and newsreader, was shot dead outside of her home in Fulham, southwest London. The biggest murder inquiry conducted by the Metropolitan Police was opened. They would have no idea just how hard and complicated this murder case would become. We will now look into the events surrounding the murder of the much loved Jill Dando. Jill Wendy Dando was born at Ashcombe House Maternity Home in Weston-super-Mare, Somerset. She was the daughter of Jack Dando and Winifred Mary Jean Hockey, who died of leukemia aged 57 in 1986. Jill had one brother named Nigel who worked as a journalist for BBC Radio Bristol before retiring in 2017, having previously worked as a journalist in local newspapers since the 1970s. When Jill was 3 years old, it was discovered that she had a hole in the heart and a blocked pulmonary artery. She had successful heart surgery on the 12th of January 1965. Later on in life, Dando was a member of the Weston-super-Mare Amateur Dramatic Society and Exeter Little Theatre Company, with whom she appeared in plays at the Barnfield Theatre. She was a volunteer at Sunshine Hospital Radio in Weston-super-Mare in 1979. Dando's first job was a trainee reporter for the local weekly newspaper, the Western Mercury, where her father and brother had previously worked. She then became a presenter for BBC South West, where she presented a regional news magazine programme. In 1988, Dando moved from regional to national television in London to present BBC television news, becoming a household name. Dando presented the BBC television programmes Breakfast Time, Breakfast News, the BBC 1 o'clock news, the 6 o'clock news. Jill was best known for presenting the travel programme Holiday and a crime appeal series Crime Watch, a series detailing unsolved crimes. Jill had the likeability and charm factor about her, which made her very popular with the British public. In 1994, she moved to a house in Gowan Avenue, Fulham. Dando was among those with the highest profile of the BBC's on-screen staff and had been the 1997 BBC Personality of the Year. From 1989 to 1996, Dando had a relationship with BBC executive Bob Wheaton. She then had a brief relationship with National Park Warden Simon Basil. In December 1997, Dando met gynecologist Alan Farthing on a blind date. Farthing was separated from his wife at the time. A couple of months after Farthing's divorce was finalised, they announced that they were engaged on the 31st of January 1999. Their wedding was set to take place on the 25th of September. On the morning of the 26th of April 1999, between 7 and 8 am, Dando left her partner's home in Chiswick. She had come to visit the house she owned in Fulham, but not really living anymore, and was in the process of selling the property. On the way, she stopped at a petrol station, Kingsmore Shopping Centre in Hammersmith, and a fishmonger's in Fulham Road. At around 11:30, Jill arrives at Gowan Avenue. She parked, set her car alarm, and made her way to the front door of her house, unaware that her every move was being observed. As Dando reached her front door, searched her handbag for her house keys, she was grabbed from behind. The assailant held her and forced her to the ground so that her face was almost touching the step of the porch. He then fired a single shot at her left temple, killing her instantly. The bullet entered her head just above her ear, parallel to the ground, and come out at the right side of her head. The gunman then left the scene, shutting the gate behind him. Richard Hughes, her next door neighbour, heard a scream from Dando. "I thought it was someone surprising somebody," he said, but heard no gunshot.
I did hear commotion, but at the particular time I didn't think that the commotion was...
What did you hear?
I heard the scream.
Hughes looked at his front window and, while not realising what had happened, made the only certain sighting of the killer. A 6-foot-tall, white man, aged around 40, walking away from Dando's house. Jill's body was discovered about 14 minutes later by a neighbour, Helen Doble, who was known to Jill. She stated that she saw a female slumped on the doorstep and knew straight away it was Jill. Helen had noticed that Jill had changed colour and there was a lot of blood loss. It was very clear to Helen that Jill was dead. Helen looked around, seeing that there was no one else around, so she called the emergency services on her mobile phone.
There's a lot of blood. Confidentially, it looks like it's Jill Dando.
The ambulance will be coming. There's the lady's chest going up and down.
Oh my God, no, I don't think she's alive.
Helen told the emergency operator that she thought the victim had been stabbed due to the amount of blood. The police were the first to arrive, closely followed by paramedics and then an air ambulance. Dando was taken to the nearby Charing Cross Hospital, where she was declared dead on arrival at 13:03.
Jill Dando arrived here by ambulance at 12:30 p.m. Despite all efforts by hospital paramedics, ambulance paramedics and hospital medical staff, she was certified dead at 1:03 p.m.
After the murder, an investigation by Scotland Yard was opened, named Operation Oxborough. This was to be the largest and most expensive investigation since the Yorkshire Rippers. Dando's status as a well-known public figure had brought her into contact with thousands of people, and she was known to millions. At this time, police resources were very stretched due to the ongoing situation with the two nail bombings. Jill Dando's murder had filled newspapers nationwide, and the British public eyes were firmly on the police for answers. The forensic search of the crime scene at Jill's house proved to be difficult, as the scene was majorly compromised by the medical services, leaving very little to be obtained. The only piece of substantial evidence found at that time was the bullet that had killed Jill. The bullet was quite unusual, as it had been crimped at one end. An obvious workshop modification, maybe to reduce charge. All local drains and sewers were searched, along with gardens and a stretch of the Thames riverbank by the park, just in case the gunman had tried to dispose of the weapon. Several people interviewed stated that they had seen a man that was at the scene before and immediately after, but the actual murder, nobody had witnessed it. One of the problems that the police faced was the amount of false information that was arriving at the incident room. Over 2,000 people were named as being either responsible or involved in Jill's murder. In a bizarre twist, the police turned to one of the programs that's made Jill famous, Crime Watch, to help find her killer. There was lots of information about suspicious men in different locations, but not one had witnessed the murder. So the problem for police was separating the suspects to the non-suspects on information given. On the 21st of May 1999, at Clarence Park Baptist Church in Weston-super-Mare, Jill Dando was buried next to her mother in the town's Ebden Road Cemetery. Dando's co-presenter Nick Ross proposed the formation of an academic institute in her name, and together with her fiancé Alan Farbin raised almost $1.5 million. The Jill Dando Institute of Crime Science was founded at University College London on the 26th of April 2001, the second anniversary of her murder. Police were facing mounting pressure from the impatient British public and media to find Jill's killer. The police had no murder weapon, no eyewitness, and no motive. Theories that a jealous ex-boyfriend or an unknown lover had killed Dando were quickly ruled out by the detectives who interviewed all Dando's friends and acquaintances and checked her phone calls. Police looked into a belief that somebody had hired an assassin to murder Dando as revenge for their being convicted as a result of evidence by Crime Watch viewers. After exhaustive inquiries, this was also ruled out by detectives. A call received by the BBC from an unknown man, possibly Eastern European, by 3 p.m. on the day of Dando's murder, only hours after she was publicly pronounced dead at 1 p.m. It is believed the man was referred to the NATO bombing of the headquarters of Serbia's public broadcaster Radio Television of Serbia. The bombing had happened on the 23rd of April 1999, and a number of prominent journalists had died. In early 1999, the UK and NATO were involved in the Kosovo War opposing Serbia. Immediately after the Dando killing, a number of telephone calls were made to the BBC and other media outlets claiming responsibility for the killing on behalf of Serb groups. These calls stated that the murder was revenge for the NATO bombing campaign in Serbia and threatened further killings. These calls were not judged wholly credible and may have been hoaxes. In 2019, it was reported that the British National Criminal Intelligence Services had given an intelligence report to the Dando murder, claiming that the murder was in retaliation for the RTS bombing and Arkan had ordered the killing. The report highlighted a possible connection between a bullet used to kill Dando and bullets used in assassinations in Germany, namely handmade markings found on them. An opposition journalist was assassinated outside his home in Belgrade just a few days before Dando's murder, and the method used in both cases was identical. In 2019, 4 men of the Serbian Secret Service were convicted of this murder. Journalist Bob Wolfendine advanced the view that a Yugoslav group was behind the Dando killing, and in various newspapers articles contested all the grounds on which the police had dismissed this possibility. Police looked into the possibility that a deranged fan may have killed Dando after she had rejected his approaches. Dando's brother Nigel informed detectives that she had become concerned by some guy pestering her in the few days before her death, but this was ruled out by detectives. A case of mistaken identity was considered, but this was judged unlikely given that the killing took place on the doorstep of Dando's own home. Following the Jimmy Savile sexual abuse scandal, a claim was made that Dando had investigated a paedophile ring at the BBC during the mid-1990s and had handed a dossier containing her findings to BBC management, prompting a revenge attack. The BBC said it had seen no evidence to support the claim. There's no surprise there, is there? The police explored the possibility of a contract killing, but since Dando was living with her fiancé and was only rarely visiting her Fulham residence, it was considered unlikely that a professional assassin would have been sufficiently well informed about Dando's movements to have known at what time she was going to be there. Every bit of CCTV evidence from 191 cameras of Dando's last journeys did not show any sign of her being followed. As months went by, the murder investigation team had spoken to more than 2,500 people and taken more than 1,000 statements. They had looked at all 486 names in Jill's file of facts. They looked into Jill's fiancé's background. All came to a blank. With little progress after a year, the police decided to follow the possibility the attacker could be a stalker with obsessive tendencies. The police decided to look over early information of the case to see if anything had been missed. A man stood out in this information. His name was Barry George. He lived about half a mile from Dando's house. George had previous convictions for sex offences in the 80s. He also had been arrested in the grounds of Royal Palace with a length of rope and a knife. The palace concerned was where Charles and Diana were living at the time. Barry George would live in a little fantasy world. He claimed to be the cousin of Queen frontman Freddie Mercury. He would also rename himself using famous people's names. The police decided to put George under surveillance on the 20th of May 2000. Police felt based on their findings there was enough to arrest him. So he was arrested and his home was extensively searched. In his home they took a jacket for forensic examination. They also took undeveloped photo reels which showed he had been stalking over 400 women. It was also revealed that George had a relevant interest in firearms. George was taken to Hammersmith police station and interviewed. He stated at the time of the murder he was at a local agency called Hafad in Creswell Street, then had gone home. He said he had nothing to do with Dando's murder and that he never even knew she lived in the area. George was asked to be in an ID parade, which he refused to take part in, so the ID parade was done on a laptop. Nobody picked out Barry George. Forensics made the discovery of a very small amount of firearms discharge in one of the pockets of George's jacket. The chemical composition was an exact match to the bullet that had killed Jill Dando. A single fibre was also found at the crime scene which matched trousers belonging to Barry George. On the 29th of May, Barry George was formally charged with the murder of Jill Dando. George was tried at the Old Bailey, convicted, and on the 2nd of July 2001 was sentenced to life imprisonment. Concern about this conviction was widespread on the basis that the case against George appeared thin. 2 appeals were unsuccessful, but after discredited forensics evidence was excluded from the prosecution's case, George's 3rd appeal succeeded in November 2007. The original conviction was quashed and a second trial lasting 8 weeks ended in George's acquittal on the 1st of August 2008. After George's acquittal, some newspapers published articles which appeared to suggest that he was guilty of the Dando murder and other offences against women. In December 2009, George accepted substantial damages from newsgroup newspapers over articles in The Sun and the News of the World, following a libel action in the High Court. On the night of her death, Dando's BBC colleague Nick Ross said on Newsnight that retaliatory attacks against criminals against police, lawyers and judges were almost unknown in the UK. Forensic examination of the cartridge case and bullet recovered from the scene of the attack suggested that the weapon used had been the result of a workshop conversion of a replica or decommissioned gun. It was argued that a professional assassin would not use such a poor quality weapon. The police therefore soon began to favour the idea that the killing had been carried out by a crazed individual, acting on an opportunist basis. This assumed profile of the perpetrator led to the focus on George. Cold case reviews by the police after 2008 concluded that Dando was killed by a professional assassin in a hard contact execution. Pressing a gun against her head would have acted as a suppressor, muffling the sound of the shot and preventing the killer from being splattered with blood. In 2012, a cold case review named Serbian warlord Arkan as a suspect, although by this time he had died Yugoslav connection. So who did actually kill Jill Dando and why? It wasn't a sex attack, it wasn't a robbery, it wasn't a jealous boyfriend. There is a chance, and more than likely we will never ever know. One thing's for sure, Jill Dando's killer may be still out there, and as of today her murder remains a mystery, and more importantly, unsolved.